or two in a real time, in a real place, where your view was implemented and provided what most people would reasonably consider satisfactory results?
Okay.
Dr. Smith, yeah.
Yes. So the transition from what was a much more laissez-faire economy in the late 19th and early 20th century to a more mixed economy in the United States, with the advent of Social Security in particular, was an advance that lots of people felt good about, felt happy about, felt contributed to their lives. Surveys today of people who both paid in and took out said that they enjoyed Social Security. The reforms that took place in the middle of the 19th century in England to support some relief for lower income people were popular at the time and remain popular through today. I think if we just try to look in real time, we've seen an expansion in public education, or at least public funding for education, that has appeared to produce large gains in educational attainment, has appeared to produce large gains in human capital, contribute to the growth of the economy, is widely supported by most people, and even today, if there's a dispute over whether or not government should produce education, the government funding of education seems to have been a widely successful process. And so those are sort of real economic examples sitting right up top here of times where government has stepped in and provided some service, managed for some contract that couldn't be written, some externality that existed. So, and then again, we can look at the series of acid rain controls we had in the Northeast corridor, or seemed to be widely successful, came in at a fairly low cost, seemed to improve the lives of almost everyone in the Northeast corridor. And these are sort of, just off the top of my head, examples of times that we've expanded the role of government to take care of some of these particular problems, and people have been satisfied with the results.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Brooke.
So, let me start by saying that probably other in this room than the people in this room, my position is not going to be the popular one, so people are not happy with my position. We'll start with that. Obviously, they are happy with the status quo because they keep voting for it, and that is the majority will. The majority will is to keep the mixed economy and to grow the coercive portion of the mixed economy at the expense of the free portion of it. I started by saying there have been no pure examples of laissez-faire capitalism. They haven't been, not in its true pure form. Even the U.S. In the first half of the 19th century had slavery, obviously not a laissez-faire policy. But even in the portions where there wasn't slavery, states and local governments intervened in a variety of different forms. Banking was never free in the United States, not truly free. States and local governments and the federal government were intervening in the finances in banking from the beginning. Created a big mess of the whole thing, which we're still suffering to this day, by the way. Policies of the 19th century still affect us today. State intervention back then still affects us today. And if you want to know how, ask me in the Q&A. But let me give you two examples where we came closest. One would be the U.S. in the 19th century. And in spite of all of that, we went from being a third-rate colony of the Brits in 1776. I mean, we won the world, let's be honest, because we weren't that important to them, and they had bigger fish to fry elsewhere, to becoming the world's mightiest industrial power by far, by the break of World War I. So in the span of 140 years, the United States went from a mediocre colony to a world empire from the perspective of wealth creation, from the perspective of industry, from the perspective of production. That happened in, for the most part, not completely, a laissez-faire environment, and I doubt if that would have happened in a mixed economy. Growth rates have declined since then, since it's exactly 100 years since the Federal Reserve and the income tax were both passed in 1913. Growth rates during that 19th century period are unprecedented in human history in terms of the increase in standard of living, particularly given where you started and particularly given the massive immigration that this country absorbed. Again, unprecedented in human history to absorb so many people into a territory all at once, and yet the success of those generations, the success of those immigrants is astounding. The second example I would use, again, it's not a pure, it's very mixed, but it's more on the side of capitalism and more laissez-faire, is Hong Kong. Hong Kong 70 years ago was a little fishing village in the middle of nowhere on a rock. Almost nobody lived there. Today, 7.5 million people live on this rock. It's a pretty amazing place if you've never been there. I encourage everybody once in their life to go visit Hong Kong. It puts New York to shame in terms of the skyscrapers. It's an energized place where per capita GDP, which is a measure of wealth, is the same as the United States. And they've done it very quickly, very short span, because of the freedom they've been allowed. I would question all the benefits that have been attributed to the mixed economy, certainly public education. I would question the benefit it has had, and Social Security certainly. I think Social Security is a dead cost on this economy for individuals, from the perspective of the individuals. I think the mixed economy lowers our standard of living, makes it harder for us to advance, and again, we lose something more precious than money. We lose freedom when we mix coercion and freedom.
Good, thank you. 2 minutes? Yeah.
So I think we want to be careful when we look at the 19th century. I think that is a great example in the United States. We did have enormously robust growth, though just arguing that coming from a unindustrialized nation, industrializing rapidly proves the benefit of laissez-faire, ignores the phenomenon of catch-up growth. And our easiest example of that, so we don't have to get too abstract, is China. Right? So China is far from a laissez-faire paradise right now, and it's enjoying incredibly rapid growth because they have opened up some elements of the market economy, and then they have catch-up growth that pushes them towards a technological frontier. And so as long as you have a basically market economy, you will catch up to the frontier, and we've seen that in China, we've seen that in Japan, we've seen that in Korea, we've seen that in the United States during the 19th century. But if we look at human happiness, what Dr. says is key here. Most people look at the reforms that happened from the 19th century to the early 20th century as having positively affected their lives. We look at public education, and we talk about that a lot because it's one of the largest things that the state actually does, is fund public education. And most people feel this has a positive impact on their lives and their children's lives and their ability to reach their potential. We look at Social Security, another very large thing that the state does. And most participants in the program seem to enjoy it. And that's our criteria. Is this program making people happier, making them happier or unhappy? It's going to be saying that, telling us that it's making them happy. And so these programs, which represent the largest expansions of the state, have made people happy. Medicare, which is in flux, even today, most people are happy about participating in the program with Medicare. And so we see that these large programs tend to produce more people saying that they make them happy than make them unhappy.
Thank you. Dr. Brooke for 2 minutes.
So I don't think you can apply catch-up growth to the US in the 19th century. There was nobody to catch up to. We were making it up as we went along. It is a completely different phenomenon than the phenomenon of China today, which benefits enormously from the human capital we in the West developed during the 19th century, from the technology that we in the West developed during the 19th century, from the capital, just the money, the infrastructure, the machinery that we could just send across there, and instantaneously they can build hard drives. America, and to a large extent Europe, Western Europe during the 19th century, had to make this all up. There was no capital. There was no knowledge base. There was no financial capital. I mean, there was no wealth. The wealth had to literally be created. So the phenomena are very different phenomena between the two. And yes, China is growing very, very fast to a large extent because of all that capital that we accumulated, that we can help them grow fast. One of the major things China did was open up its economy to foreigners. Happiness. Generally, I don't trust happiness studies. I don't know how, people's assessment of their own happiness is a pretty fuzzy thing, which is hard to put their arms around. But yeah, people are happy about Social Security because they don't think about the alternative. The alternative would be to put the money into a saving account and have at the end of the day more money than they would under Social Security. What Social Security does is it rewards people who wouldn't have saved. which is a minority. Most people are responsible, they could have saved. But people don't think that way. If they do the math, like I'm a finance guy, so I do the math, they would realize that they've been screwed, that they made less money. And what they're doing is this coercion, all it does is it subsidizes irresponsibility and harms responsibility. It subsidizes the people who wouldn't save and harms the people who would have saved.
Well, thank you very much to both the panelists. We've finished the structured and formal part of the program, but this is where you all play a part. We welcome any questions that you might have. Josh, are you going to go around, or someone going to go around?
No, they're going to line up along the middle.
Okay. If you want to kind of line up along the middle, and why don't I say this as the only stipulation? Either have your question posed to both panelists. I want to be even-handed here. Or if, you guys at the front have the luxury of being able to ask anybody, but if you feel there have been 2 or 3 questions to one of the panelists and the other panelist hasn't really had a shot, please ask a question to the other one, so that we can have some balance here, and I think that's of value to everybody. So, first person, if you want to ask your question, introduce yourself if you like, and I might repeat the question because I think for the purposes of the video, the web stream, I've been asked to do that. Is that correct, Josh? So I will.
Would you prefer to just give
Yeah,
up your mic?
well, so I'll ask a question back there, so the audience really needs to know what the question is as well. So please.
Very well. At the beginning of the discussion, I believe that both of the participants were more in a deontological sort of perspective, speaking from an ethical and moral perspective. So we saw a lot of allusions to justice and equality and principles, right? Principles-based criteria. And then at the end, the final rebuttals to the final question were all about a utilitarian calculus, a teleological perspective. The problem that I saw when I was trying to sit there and say, oh, there's a point for one side, a point for the other side, was I think most of the time spent talking past each other from an ethical perspective, not from a financial success perspective, which may be ethical. It's up to you. So my question or my request to you is to nail down a single criterion. And that may be a horrible oversimplification, and if that's the case, I apologize. But to each of you, nail down a single criterion. Is it the alleviation of suffering, perhaps, that we heard mentioned? Is it a calculus of happiness, and can we trust a calculus of happiness? Or is it some single or multiple principles? Is it really about justice? Is it about equality? What is the one thing that we can use to weigh both of these perspectives, if such a thing exists? Thank you.
And I'll just say the question basically is, what is the essence of a mixed economy? What is the essence of a laissez-faire capitalist? And I'm not society, and I'm not sure if you wanted this in the question to try to engage each other as well. So if you state what your essence is, and then maybe say, okay, the essence of the other guy is this, I'll try to engage that a little bit. Is that a good way of summarizing the question? I don't know who wants to go first.
I can go first. So I think that's right. And finding a single moral principle is difficult, but I think that the alleviation of human suffering as a good unto itself is probably the closest thing that you can come to say is a foundational principle of the mixed economy. And as I see the difference with Dr. Brooks and a sort of more completely laissez-faire system, is the idea that any incursion on human freedom is unjust, no matter what the reason or no matter what the supposed benefit is. Am I correct? So that counter-poses against the idea that the alleviation of suffering, human suffering, is itself a good or a value.
Yeah, so the fundamental principle here would be that system which allows human beings to make choices that lead to their own individual flourishing. So it is an individualistic focus. It is about you as an individual and what system. And I believe that what you need in order to achieve human flourishing, I think human flourishing is attained when you are free to exercise your mind. Our reason is our capacity to survive, but it's our capacity to flourish. And I think there's one enemy of reason, The number one enemy of individual human reason is force. When I put a gun to your back and say, from now on, 2 + 2 = 5, that's it. You can't think. You can't build a bridge. You can't program a computer. You can't do anything. Because otherwise you're dead, right? Because if you succeed, 2 + 2 = 4, and you're shot. So I want a society which leaves people free to engage their mind, to engage their reason, to pursue their values that they believe will lead to their success. And therefore, I want a society that extracts that force, that prohibits people from putting a gun to their back. I don't want it, and human suffering, if it exists, it exists. You know, there's lots of human suffering today in the world that I don't think about. I don't, I mean, I'll admit it, right? People are suffering in Cambodia, people are certainly suffering in North Korea. I don't think about it. You know, my life is my life, and that's my focus. The focus is, how do I attain my values? And again, I think the way to do that in a social context, I have to do a lot with myself, but in a social context, what I want is to be free from people forcing me to live life differently than I believe I should.
I think they did a pretty good job of engaging the other one on their own term. Next question.
So yesterday I took a trip to Fantasyland, and I had this magic machine where I could put 1 coin in and it would give me 2 coins out. And I realized, you know, if such a machine existed, man, that'd be pretty cool. Everybody would want one, right? Well, I thought about it, and I thought about the fact that for the past 10 years, somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of all federal expenditures have been financed by debt, not by taxation. And I realized the government, for 10 years at least, has been a machine where people put some money in, and the government gives them more money back. The problem is you can't keep doing that. It's not sustainable. Eventually you end up like Greece, you end up like Ireland, you end up in the direction that Spain is heading. And so my question with regard to a mixed economy is, why do governments always seem to sell programs that are unsustainable? Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid have been brought up. They're popular. They're popular with 60 to 70% of the population. But it seems like they would be if they're paying out more than they're taking in. At some point, they're going to be taking in more than they're paying out, and maybe they won't be so popular. And so, from the advocate for the mixed economy, I'm interested in understanding why it is that almost all governments all over the world are in debt right now, and why do they always seem to be in debt all the time?
Okay, I guess the question is, mixed economy leads to government debt, and the assumption is that that is normatively bad. Right. I guess in the question, the way I understand it.
And so, I mean, I think the issue of debt finance is complex, and it's kind of what I spend my life thinking about. But the short answer to that is twofold. Number one is that a large portion of government services are funded by state and local governments, which for the most part don't go into debt. And so you have governments that are supported by the people and don't go into debt, and people like the idea of public education that's mainly done by state and local governments. And so I don't think it's evident. At the national level, you do see governments often going into debt, and the reason that they do that is typically because their borrowing costs are so low. And so, for the United States is a great example. The U.S. government has enormous amounts of debt, but the U.S. government borrows at an extremely low interest rate. So essentially, a short-term debt for the U.S. government can borrow at 0%. And that's a very attractive trade-off to make, to say that we can finance a program now, and we will pay no interest on pushing it forward into the future. Most companies will take that if offer was given to them. Most households will take the offer given to them. The U.S. government is one of the few institutions to whom it is offered because of its political stability and the fact that over its history, it's never missed a debt.
Can I take a comment on that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I don't think that's a reason they take on the debt. The reason they take on debt is easy. It's easy, right? You spend it now, and you're going to tax people who are not voting right now. And, you know, it's easy for grandmothers to collect a lot of money, and they don't think that their grandkids are going to have to pay for it. And when you tell them, they're actually quite shocked about it. But it's easier to shift the burden into the future to generations that don't vote. If we had to tax all government expenditures right now, we would rebel in the ballot booth. But It's our kids, it's our grandkids, who cares, right? It's in the future, somehow it'll all be whitewashed. And let me just say, the reason the government can raise debt right now at 0% is because it's selling the bonds to itself. It's printing the money. The Federal Reserve right now is buying 75% of all debt issued by the federal government. That's cheating, right? And it's cheating. There's a cost to the cheating. What that cost is, we'll find out in the years to come. But it's some form of inflation, whether it's a bubble or prices go up or something. But you know, they really are right now printing the money. That's all they're doing. When the Federal Reserve buys the debt from the government, all it is running the presses. It's not a market that's determining the debt, the interest at zero right now. If the Fed got out, this is why they're printing the money. If the Fed got out of bond buying, interest rates would go up. That's why they're not getting out of it, because they want interest rates to be low.
Yes, next question.
Yes, this question is for, I'd like both speakers to address it. It's mostly from what the doctor on my left said. It has to do with the idea of coercion and principle. So I think there's three parts to this. One, am I right in thinking that you think it's okay to use coercion in some cases? In this case, for the alleviation of suffering. Don't use coercion at all. Don't initiate force unless it's to help someone else with their suffering. If I got this right, I want you, if you could clarify that. Sounds like you already have. So my question is, what are both of your positions on this? Can principles be violated? And under what conditions? What are your positions on principles as such? Can they be violated? Is it okay to use, for example, initiate force against people when normally you don't, because that's like stealing, etc. I guess the other thing is, I had a third part to this, but I guess we could start with that. The whole idea of when it's okay to initiate force against your neighbor, when normally the principle is you don't do that.
Well, why don't we broaden the question, which was sort of the second part I think we were talking about, which is to address it to both panelists and say, are there circumstances under which your cherished principles may be adaptable? Let's put it that way. Perhaps you can think of a situation or two when that's the case. My sense is it's probably going to be a little bit easier for Professor Smith, since by definition this is a sort of pragmatic approach. But so why don't we let him go first, so then we can.
Yeah. So off the top of my head, one of the reasons why I try to focus on the alleviation of human suffering and making that a criterion for whether or not we justify some sort of coercive action is that reduces the amount of cases where we think we would have to cross that principle, right? It puts out of reach some things that we might like to do that we wouldn't otherwise do, but it reduces that. So off the top of my head, I can't think of a case. I wouldn't be inflexible about it. I wouldn't say that this is that we have found, you know, the absolute moral rock principle, and this is it. Because I just don't think that moral philosophy is finished. You know, the project